They signed the papers in the quiet office, the pen scratching across leather. Each stroke felt heavier than the last, laden with promise, obligation, and a future neither could fully anticipate. The first days under the same roof were awkward, tense, and electric. Alara watched him from across the kitchen as he made coffee with precision, jaw tight, eyes flicking to her occasionally, lingering just a beat too long. Lucien studied her too, noticing how she flinched at loud noises, how she instinctively touched her stomach when she thought no one was watching, how her laugh came soft and shaky at small absurdities. They argued. They bickered. She wanted to slap him sometimes for the way he controlled everything. He wanted to throttle her sometimes for the way she resisted every command. And yet, moments slipped through. Moments where he would pause mid-argument and just watch her, expression softening. Moments where she would catch him staring, eyes distant, chest tight, fingers brushing against hers almost by accident. Neither admitted it. And then, the city hummed outside, and Alara whispered into the quiet night, "I hope you'll be there, no matter what." Quote, somewhere in the vast apartment, Lucien thought the exact same thing. Alara had never imagined she'd live in a place like this. Blackwood Tower loomed over the city, glass and steel glinting even in the soft morning light. Inside, everything was polished, sleek, and precise, just like its owner. Every hallway whispered power. Every quiet hum reminded her she was no longer just Alara Moore, the girl surviving on tips and deliveries. She was now the woman under contract to Lucien Blackwood, billionaire CEO, and mother of his unborn twins. The first week was surreal. She had settled into the guest suite, small but surprisingly comfortable. The morning light reflected off the floor-to-ceiling windows as she moved through the apartment, coffee mug in hand, stomach curling slightly at the new weight she carried. Lucien appeared in the kitchen, crisp shirt sleeves rolled, hands wrapped around a mug, perfectly composed. He didn't greet her with words at first, just a glance, almost imperceptible, like he was studying her. She felt her pulse quicken. "Morning," she said softly. He lifted a brow, then inclined his head slightly.
"Morning."
His voice was controlled, calm, measured, like every word was carefully calculated. She busied herself making toast and eggs, trying to ignore the way his presence pressed against her consciousness. She couldn't stop noticing him, the way his jaw clenched slightly when he concentrated, the faint crease between his brows, the meticulousness in every movement. Lucien didn't speak much. Rarely did he offer comfort. But small things, gestures that almost went unnoticed, began to matter. A hand resting on the counter near hers. An eyebrow raised when she laughed quietly at herself. A brief pause in conversation as he watched her move through the apartment, thoughtful and unreadable. Then Serafina Vale arrived. Alara caught the first glimpse of her in the lobby, a woman whose elegance seemed effortless, whose smile was polished, whose every movement radiated control. She was beautiful, yes, but there was something sharp in her presence that set Alara on edge. Lucien greeted her warmly, hands firm on her shoulders for a beat longer than necessary. He called her
Serafina,
my friend,
Lucien.
and that was all. Alara stiffened. That was all. Nothing more. No explanation, no warning, no hint of what Serafina meant to him, other than a shared past he apparently valued. How will the appearance of Serafina affect the relationship that is slowly building up between Lucien and Alara? If you want to know, please like and subscribe to this video as you wait for the next video. Alara found herself watching, guessing, analyzing. Was she an ex, a confidant, someone dangerous? She didn't know, and she couldn't ask. Lucien didn't volunteer information, and Alara wasn't about to probe too deeply, not yet. That night, she sat at the kitchen counter, chopping vegetables for dinner, hands trembling slightly. She glanced at the living room door, expecting Lucien, and felt a tiny jolt whenever Serafina's presence crossed her mind. Lucien entered quietly, carrying papers, absently placing them on the table. He didn't mention Serafina. He didn't acknowledge the subtle tension she felt. He was careful, distant, precise, his usual self. Alara's pulse quickened. She wanted to ask, but what could she say? Who is she really to you? That sounded petty, dangerous. She swallowed. Instead, she said nothing. She chopped, keeping her head down, letting the clatter of the knife on the cutting board mask her racing thoughts. The next few days were a careful dance of routines, whispered glances, and unspoken curiosity. Alara noticed little things, the way Lucien's expression softened for the briefest moment when she brought him coffee. The way his eyes lingered on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The almost imperceptible pause in his movements when she passed by. She hated how much it affected her. She hated herself for the flutter she felt in her chest when he smiled politely. She hated that she wanted him to notice her, to care. And yet, she couldn't stop watching, analyzing, longing. Lucien, of course, didn't reveal anything. He never explained Serafina's role in his life. He never warned her. He didn't ask about her thoughts, her fears, her feelings. He simply existed, meticulous, deliberate, a constant presence she could not ignore. Alara's imagination did the rest. Every time Serafina appeared, she constructed stories in her mind. Childhood sweetheart, longtime friend, secret enemy, secret lover. Every theory sent her pulse racing. Every glance from Lucien to Serafina was a dagger in her chest, even if it was nothing at all. And yet, in the quiet moments, away from the city lights and their tense routines, something else began to form. Mutual understanding, quiet admiration, small gestures that meant more than words could. A brush of hands reaching for the same book. A shared glance over morning coffee. A pause in conversation that felt louder than any argument. Neither of them named it. Neither admitted it, but beneath the carefully maintained distance, something was shifting. Something electric, fragile, real. And Alara began to understand, in the quiet of the night, that whatever Serafina represented, or didn't represent, she could not control what was growing between her and Lucien. They moved through their days with careful civility, subtle tension, and the unspoken, magnetic pull that neither wanted to confront. Somewhere, in that vast apartment filled with glass and silence, Alara placed a hand over her growing belly and whispered softly, almost to herself, "I hope you'll be there, no matter what."
Be there.
Quote, and somewhere across the room,
No matter
Lucien's
what.
gaze lingered on her, not in warning, not in command, not in jealousy, but in recognition. Recognition of what was, what could be, and what neither of them yet dared to name. The days passed like a slow tide. Alara found herself constantly on edge, balancing groceries, doctor's appointments, and her own classes, while trying not to let the weight of her secret, the twins growing inside her, crush her completely. Lucien, in his silent, meticulous way, ensured the apartment ran like a small, precise machine. Yet, for all his control, there were moments when his attention lingered, and she could feel it even when he said nothing. She caught herself staring at him more than once, watching the way his hands moved over papers, the slight crease that appeared between his brows when he was thinking too hard, the almost imperceptible pause before he spoke. Each detail etched itself into her memory, even as she chastised herself for noticing. Serafina's presence added an unpredictable rhythm to their lives. She appeared without warning, at social events, business dinners, even casual lunches with Lucien. Always smiling, always polished, always poised. And always, a mystery. Alara had no idea what she meant to him. Childhood friend, confidant, something more, she couldn't ask. Every glance she stole in Lucien's direction told her to be careful, to wait, to watch. But her imagination had already started filling in the gaps. Every fleeting look he gave Serafina felt like a puzzle piece she wasn't allowed to touch. One evening, Alara sat at the counter, chopping vegetables for dinner. Lucien entered silently, carrying a folder. He didn't say anything at first, simply placed it on the counter beside her. The faint scent of his cologne lingered, subtle and intoxicating. "Evening," she murmured. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes flicked to her stomach, then back to the papers, as if measuring how much to say. "Dinner will be ready in 30 minutes. I scheduled your mother's appointments for the week." Quote, Alara froze. She hadn't even asked. You did that." Quote, he gave a slight nod, no smile, no emotion beyond precise acknowledgement. "Everything you need is taken care of." Quote, her throat tightened. Gratitude battled with shame. She wasn't used to receiving help. She was used to earning, to scraping, to surviving. And yet, this wasn't just help. This was him noticing, anticipating, acting. She looked down, fingers still trembling on the knife. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't look at her, didn't respond. But she felt it, an unspoken reassurance, a quiet connection neither of them could name. Later that night, she found herself sitting by the window, city lights stretching endlessly below. Lucien was in the next room, faint sounds of paper shuffling and soft footsteps reaching her ears. She pressed her hands against her stomach, imagining the tiny lives moving inside her. 2 little hearts she couldn't even name yet. Her mind wandered to Serafina. That perfect smile, the sharp way she carried herself, the way she moved as though the world belonged to her. And she couldn't help but wonder, what does she have with him? What do they share? Lucien appeared behind her suddenly, quiet as a shadow. She jumped, then exhaled slowly. You shouldn't sit here alone, he said softly. Not a command, not concerned, just soft, deliberate words. I'm fine, she whispered, though her heart was racing. You're not, he said simply, and for a second, she felt exposed, seen, in a way no one ever looked at her before. She didn't know whether to be embarrassed, grateful, or terrified. He didn't linger. A hand brushed briefly against her shoulder before he turned away, moving back toward his office. The touch was fleeting, almost accidental, but it left her trembling. The next morning brought its own tension. Serafina had arranged a lunch meeting with Lucien, and Alara was invited. Or rather, she was told she could attend. Alara spent the morning obsessively preparing, adjusting her hair, checking her outfit, pacing. Her stomach twisted, not from pregnancy alone, but from the anticipation of being in the same room as Serafina and trying to decipher the invisible thread connecting her to Lucien. Lucien, as usual, was unreadable. He left the apartment precisely on time, his expression controlled, his brief smile only for her. They didn't speak of the meeting, didn't discuss Serafina. And that omission hurt. It made Alara's curiosity and anxiety grow exponentially. At the restaurant, Serafina arrived first, flawless, radiant, every movement measured. Lucien greeted her with an easy familiarity, a subtle warmth in his eyes that Alara didn't understand. They spoke briefly, words light, smiles polite, but something flickered between them that Alara could only guess at. And she guessed everything. Childhood bond, shared secrets, longtime loyalty, perhaps a love unspoken, or at least unacknowledged. Her pulse quickened. Every glance Lucien spared Serafina felt like a secret she wasn't allowed to know. They sat down, the three of them at the table. Conversation flowed, but Alara noticed it immediately, Serafina's subtle influence over Lucien. The way his posture softened slightly in her presence, the way his attention sometimes flicked to her before returning to business. Nothing overt, nothing obvious, but enough to make Alara hyper-aware of every movement, every glance, every word. And yet, there were moments when Lucien looked at Alara differently. Moments when his gaze lingered just slightly longer, when his tone softened, when a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Small gestures that contradicted the world he shared with Serafina. Alara caught herself hoping that he was noticing her, that he was feeling something she couldn't yet name. Hoping that, despite the mystery of Serafina, despite the uncertainty, she might matter to him more than she allowed herself to believe. Will everything work well for Lucien's and Alara's relationship? Will he confess his love to her, or will another event that will change their lives take place?